Hello and welcome to the Devil's Advocate podcast. I'm joined with a great panel tonight. Joined with Keane, the obviously regular, you know who he is. Julio again is on, and we've got a lovely guest joining us tonight, Adam Matic. How are you doing, Adam? Everything good?
I'm all good. All good, guys. Pleasure to be on.
Lovely to see you, mate. So, obviously, we are chatting a lot about tonight in terms of the ownership structure, the new owners potential, minority owners potentially coming in Jim Ratcliffe. I suppose it's best probably just to get straight into it, really. So, what I'm going to do is just go on my sort of pattern on the screen. So, Keane, you're next to me. So, let's go with you first. Obviously, big news coming in at the moment. It's looking like potentially this week, Jim Ratcliffe's official 25% buy-in stake of Man United is going to be announced. What are your sort of thoughts on it? I know it's kind of divided opinion across the online fan base, but it's always good to hear a friendly face's opinion. So what do you make of the whole situation, Keane, mate?
Look, ideally, I wanted him to come in with the 69% to buy out the full Glazer shares straight away. Now, obviously, they didn't want that to happen. They're looking towards 2026, aren't they, in terms of maybe selling to the biggest buyer. I'm still unsure kind of how this is going to go, because if they're looking to sell off the club when the 2026 World Cup happens in the USA, is Sir Jim's 25% with a view to, buy it, to buy the full 69% shares in the future? Is there going to be an obligation or an option? I think that's where my head's at in terms of this thing, because we've always seen that the Glazers haven't been trusted. Like, the amount of times they said they'd visit the fan forums, and have dialogue with the fans, they've never done that. The amount of times they said they'd invest in facilities, the training ground, the stadium, they haven't done that. They haven't, though, when it comes to the second season of any manager making a bit of progress, they don't back them to make that extra step. They always sign older players to get into the top four. So, look, when in terms of the Glazers' track record, I don't have much faith that they'll coexist with Ratcliffe. I think Ratcliffe will come in with the right intentions in terms of bringing the right people in, listening to various different media outlets this week and hearing about who may come in, and speaking to people who are involved in the media as well, saying about who he may bring in. So I think my biggest worry about it is if Jim Ratcliffe's coming in, and obviously Richard Arnold's gone, which is great. I know Murtough looks like his future looks like to be in doubt as well. So I just want to make sure he's bringing in the right people and he has the right intentions. And then, look, we just have to see what this sporting control entails, because it's all well and good having sporting control, but if you have sporting control, who sets the budget? Where's that sporting control limited to? Is it just over transfers, recruitment, and the directors of football, or how far does this control go? I think these are the questions I think many United fans are going to have in these next couple of weeks, when he puts out a statement and outlines his plans. So I think it's just kind of a wait and see type of thing, but I am kind of going into this kind of with a cautious mindset, considering the Glazers kind of breaking so many promises before and their known track record.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think there's lots of ifs and buts at the moment, and I think ultimately it's going to be a test of time to see what happens. But before we kind of get my opinion, Julio, I want to come to you next. What's kind of your thought process around Sir Jim coming in? Obviously, the division among the fan base, especially online, I think has come from Qatar against Sir Jim effectively, and I think it's kind of been a case of who people preferred. What was kind of your preference, and do you see it positively in terms of Sir Jim coming in, or are you a little bit more pessimistic?
I mean, it was a year ago now, but when we first heard about the whole it's Sir Jim against the Qataris, whether it was state-owned or Sheikh Jassim on his own, I was always of the thought process. The first thing I always said was the fact that there was never going to be a perfect owner, no matter who was going to take over. There's no such thing now as a United fan with Qatari-level money coming in, but it's not state-owned. There was never going to be this perfect owner who ticked all the boxes. The way I saw it was, I thought that I didn't want any more debt on the club. I didn't want, any kind of restrictions or anything. And I thought that if whoever was going to come in and leave in 5-10 years, I would have thought that potentially having all that state-owned money would have seen that happen, in the sense of who's going to leave the football club in the better position. the only way I saw it. The fact that obviously Sir Jim has won this supposed bidding war, if you want to call it that. I wasn't of the. There were a lot of people, obviously, we saw who wanted Sheikh Jassim, who were very like, oh, that's it, it's over, you were never going to win again, or this, that. My thought process was, well, Sir Jim's coming in. It's not the full takeover we all wanted as fans. All we can realistically do now is hope that someone who's had a little bit of experience in running of a football club, albeit maybe running it like a business, there's such thing as an Ineos curse. You hope that there is maybe, if we're led to believe that there is a personal touch about this acquisition from Sir Jim, you'd hope that maybe he'll run it in the sense of he'll get the right people in, and it's very difficult to say right now. I think the one thing we can all share an opinion on is the fact that it won't be as quick as maybe we'd like, the turnaround, because the Glazers are still here. Keane raised a very good point about the sport in control. How far does it go? Almost like knowing the Glazers and knowing different stories that have come out every summer. It wouldn't surprise me if we start hearing stories every summer where Jim Ratcliffe or whoever was on the board asked for this. Jim Ratcliffe said yes, but the Glazers said no. A story of that kind of element. I see some kind of scenario like that happening every year. So it's going to be interesting. I think the one thing that all the fans need is clarity. We can spin all this, oh, this guy's coming in, or, this person's leaving. Okay, well, we've got these 3 or 4 or 5 names coming in. They look like the real deal, but we've seen this before in all instances. So it's really a case of watch this space, see how it goes, give Sir Jim a bit of time to get his feet under the desk and propose his plan of what he'd like to do. So it's going to be it's a bit of a confusing time right now, but all we can do is watch and hope.
Yeah, I mean, I probably agree with most of that, to be fair. I mean, Reece has decided to join us, and it's thrown me off. I think, Adam, you were next in my sort of order of lists. So, Adam, I'll ask you the same question. What's kind of your thought process around Jim Ratcliffe coming in? Did you prefer Qatar? Did you prefer Sir Jim? Was it a case of just getting the glaze out? What was your thoughts, mate?
Yeah, if it was like every United fan, it was the debt gone, the glaze is gone. Ultimately, that's the goal for everyone in all of this. I think anyone would have accepted anyone taking over United as long as the debt was gone. The Glazers were out of this football club. We knew it wasn't going to be a simple process with the Glazers. The sheer fact that it's a year on now from that news breaking on Sky about them looking for investments or possibly selling Manchester United tells you everything you need to know about the Glazer ownership. They're well known for taking an age to make a decision on anything. The fact that there's so many Glazer family members involved in Manchester United on the board and has a say in every decision that goes down at the football club. That includes the transfers, sponsorships, anything like that. I think we knew he was in for a long road, but so Jim Ratcliffe has played it clever. Sheikh Jassim went down the road of getting into bed with the United fans, building this utopia that he was going to invest so much money into the squad, change the infrastructure, the debt was going to be completely cleared. United were going to be dining at the top table of European football again consistently. But the one thing that Sir Jim Ratcliffe did was what Sir Jim Ratcliffe does. He's a clever, savvy businessman, and he got into bed with the Glazers. He didn't upset them. He didn't slag them off at one point in the whole bidding process. He just worked around what deal worked for them and one way of getting his foot in the door. That's all he did. Sheikh Jassim, if he doesn't even exist, I mean, no one knows. Has anyone ever heard the guy speak? It sounded good. On paper, it looked like the best deal. And the Glazers obviously looked at that, thought we're in a position where we can turn this deal down. And that's what they did in the end. They just used it, bumped up the price, share price went up, it went down, ultimately it went up and up and up. And now they're getting that £33 per share price that they want for Jim Ratcliffe, which is going to be announced this week. And they're happy with that. They've still got power, they've still got voting power, but what they are bringing in is a team in Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his merry men, and we all know who they are. We've talked about them all week in terms of new CEOs, directors of football, best in class, used to running sporting enterprises and getting the best out of everything that they do. Yes, you could say he got off to a sticky start at Nice, but their general trajectory has been an upwards pathway, and they're looking decent. Everything, I mean, that was his first sort of football side of things in terms of business operations and his first venture into the football world. And yeah, like everyone, you've got to learn by your mistakes, and I think he did. And now it looks like it's stabling out there a little bit. Use that blueprint, but in a bigger mode for Manchester United. And hopefully Manchester United will run better. Because let's be honest, 10 years since Alex Ferguson left, if you give any decent sporting structure 1.5 billion to spend over 10 years, you're going to make a success out of it. But Manchester United had complete idiots running the football club with no sporting background at all. Just money men. And I said this on my show not too long ago. The one time we hear from Joe Glazer in how many years is to say goodbye to a man that's been there for 16 years. So pretty much the whole time he's been there, who's done nothing but make the Glazers money. That's the first time we've heard from Joe Glazer for a very, very long time. In that statement about Richard Arnold leaving the football club, tells you everything you need to know. But the Super League not working is definitely why the Glazers have had to move in this direction. And they've got what they wanted in the end. They've now got a team coming in under who are used to dealing with this sort of thing on a bigger scale. Let's not forget what they're used to dealing with money-wise every single year. It eclipses Manchester United about 50 times over in terms of 70 billion turnover a year in Ineos and everything that they're invested in. So I think he's coming in. He knows what he's doing. He knows exactly how to get the best out of what his businesses are and the people that do that. And I think if you offered Manchester United this time last year, before the news broke, someone else was going to come in and run Manchester United, it wouldn't just solely be the Glazers that were calling the shots. I think every Manchester United fan would have jumped to that opportunity just to think that we were actually going to be run as a proper football club. I look at it and I go, it's like when the Glazers first came into Manchester United. They had David Gill and Sir Alex Ferguson and a team there that worked, and they're going back to that now. It's like going back to the start, except they're bringing someone else in now to clear up their mess. That's how I see it. But if we can see better performances on the pitch and better performances that's going to enhance that off the pitch, then you've got to sort of look at it in a positive way. If, buts and maybes, guys, I know, and we'll have to wait. Like Julio said, the clarity is the biggest thing. What does this deal entail for 25%? Is there a pathway to the Glazers giving up the rest of their shares and Sir Jim having majority say in everything? I think that's what United fans will want to know. But ultimately, and Keane also mentioned this as well, what does sporting control mean? What does that entail? Is it just solely the infrastructure, training ground, Old Trafford, the youth team, the women's team, everything like that? Is he not involved in the commercial side? Because let's not forget, Sir Jim Ratcliffe is a money-making machine himself. So will he not want to have a part of that as well? It's, for me, I think he's foot in the door to bigger things. Sir Jim Ratcliffe is known as Dr. No in the union trades. He's gone up against some big players and won. He's not messing around. And I keep saying this to people who say, as long as the Glazers there, it's always going to be the same. So Jim Ratcliffe stomps all over the Glazers in terms of business and what he's achieved. And he ain't coming into Manchester United to just let them rule his 1.4 billion investment. He's coming in and he'll have a say on what is going on. He's not stupid. Bonuses. He's a United fan. He's dealt in football before. And the people he's talking about bringing in are well known to be best in class and dealt with some serious players before. Very experienced in the football world, and that's something that United haven't had for decades now in terms of how this club is run. And that, for me, can only be a positive, guys, so far. We have to look at it that way and try and look like there's a light at the end of that dark tunnel, which is Manchester United's future.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there, obviously, about the football people. We'll come on to that very soon. Ultimately, I think my thoughts are the Glazers have put United up for sale, just have a bit of a clarity in terms of what they could potentially get for it. I don't think Man United were ever up for sale completely. I think there was always a minority investment there that they were originally wanting to get. And thankfully for the Glazers, Ratcliffe has come in and been able to offer them that. Ultimately, my worry is that the Glazers stay there for the long term now. I hope that isn't the case, and I hope there is a clear pathway for Ratcliffe to fully purchase and buy out the Glazers shares, which I think from what reports have said, that is the case. Ultimately, what I would say, though, is, like, I know you mentioned it a few times there, Adam, but, you know, Jim Ratcliffe isn't a mug. He's not going to come into somewhere where he feels like he's going to get taken the mickey out of. You know, you've seen that through his business deals throughout his lifetime. He's a really shrewd businessman who knows what he's doing. And I think he's played it probably the right way in terms of getting his foot in the door to hopefully long-term get rid of the Glazers and allow him to have the club that he supported as a boy. I mean, the guy's from Middleton and grew. But obviously, before we move on to the sort of the football side of things and the football versus commercial operations, Reece, I wanted to get your thoughts, mate. What's kind of your thinking around Sir Jim Ratcliffe coming in? Are you happy? Are you unhappy? Would you have preferred Qatar? Are you happy with the fact that long term, hopefully, Sir Jim ends up purchasing the Glazers and this is the best way forward? What are your thoughts?
I was never for Qatari anyway. Like regardless of the situation, obviously, I knew they were like the front runners, like the favourites, but I originally said, like, Keno backed me up on this, like, when the whole situation started, like, a year ago? Like, overall discussions, all that started a year ago into this year. I always said I wanted Ratcliffe regardless, because it made more sense. But I understood that, obviously, with situations, obviously, certain comments were made by Ratcliffe that obviously had maybe a little bit of mistrust, and obviously, could you actually trust the guy? Obviously, that swayed me a little bit. But the one thing that really reflected a lot for the whole thing is you saw how quickly people's allegiances towards the club in terms of like the ownership situation really settled really quickly. So like big United accounts were immediately Qatar flags supporting Qatar, you know that, and there were others who were like supporting Jim Ratcliffe, and it was going. Ironically, our fan base online is an absolute shitfest. But we saw it like back and forth between Qatar, like ones who were for Qatari, ones who were for Jim Ratcliffe. It added to the whole sense of the fan base being divided, and added to the sense of who is actually the best for the club in the long term, but also the short term as well, because both the short term and the long term is equally important as each other. And we saw that going back and forth, like fans trying to sway others into what you should, what they. So, like, you can think what is best, but that doesn't mean it's somebody else's point of view. That's your own. But they were trying to sway it on others. So my mind was purely on the sense of going forward is who is actually committed to what they say, who is actually going to put up or shut up. In the sense that I think Jim Ratcliffe from pretty much from day one has been, as Adam says, and I think Jim Ratcliffe, funnily enough, went the right way. You're not going to buy a football club by getting, ironically, in bed with the fans. You can get in bed with the fans all you want, but the fans aren't going to actually sell you the club. If you want to buy a business or you want to buy something from someone, you need to go straight to the source. You have to go to the actual owner itself, the employer, whether you like it or not, like to actually get the club from the hands of the Glazers. He's playing all right. When you want to get at like a business, you've got to go to the very source. You've got to go at the very top. The ones that are actually looking to sell, or effectively looking to sell in that sense. And that was the Glazers. Has it gave him the slight reputation amongst certain fans that he's a Glazer sympathiser? Yes, there's a lot of people that have said that. Me, I'm choosing to ignore that because I think it is bollocks. Frankly, I think he's done the right decision. If you want to go for something, you've got to go for the source. Like the fans are important. Like fans are the lifeblood of your football club, but not a single one of our fans owns this football club. None of them own anything to do with this football club. They're just there, the lifeblood, week in, week out. Totally different. He's going to get the shares and all that. He's going to get a pathway. he's in it for the long term, and the fact is, Ineos is going to be the one that owns the club, regardless of how long Jim Ratcliffe is involved. Like, I mean, the man is 70, so like even after like obviously time will catch up to him, and this is no like disrespectful manner, but
You're going down a dark path here. Fucking hell.
I'm not. I'm just saying, in terms of the actual long term, he will have the best people involved for him, even if he is not physically able to run it himself. So for the likes of Blanc, etc., like he clearly has that path set, and I think that is what you want. That's the best sense going forward, and for me, I'm fine with that. So I'm happy with that. I'm glad that he's at least been transparent. I have not seen anything come from the Sheik thing. All I've seen is Twitter accounts. Not gonna admit, they've been a bit humour back and forth. I quite enjoyed it, but I haven't seen anything transparent from that side that suggests that they were showing it. So I'm happy at least there's something here transparent for the club's long-term future, but also a change in the short term. So I'm happy with that.
I think a lot of people online in particular have, and not to stereotype, but I think a lot of people online have got a little bit excited by a shiny new toy at the idea of having new stadiums, new players and all this coming in by a guy who allowed representatives to do everything for him. It was a little bit shady to me, I think, with the Qatar side of things. Also, a lot of people were calling for these new AI-generated stadiums that look nothing like Old Trafford.
Did you see the ones with the mountains in the background? Never knew Salford had a great mountains there.
I mean, I don't know what mountains they were, but they certainly weren't the background of Salford.
I will admit though, I did like the Allianz Trafford. I mean, German bias aside, I liked the look of the one that looked like the Bayern Munich Stadium, but that's like a modern, effective approach that makes money, but also it's a football stadium. But you're right, I was quite funny with the AI shit. Like, it was quite funny.
Yeah, that was correct.
I'd probably go against that, Reece. I thought it looked ridiculous. I think Old Trafford is quite a sacred place, and although I wasn't particularly adverse to not knocking it down, but a complete, effectively a complete rebuild of the place. Because obviously, Keane, you and I go quite regularly. Adam, I'm not sure your situation in terms of how often you go. I'm not sure, but the ground is something really special to a lot of United fans, and seeing it knocked down and rebuilt, I think is something that a lot of match goers wouldn't want. I'd also say as well that a lot of the people that were calling for the ground to be looking like these soulless bowls that looked like they were generated by AI and looked like they had mountains in, that weren't in the background of Salford or Manchester. It was quite often the same sort of people that were saying what they wanted. It was quite frustrating. But obviously we mentioned it, but going away from that, obviously we mentioned, Adam, you mentioned it before, and you just briefly mentioned it there as well, Reece. In terms of the football operations and what's coming in, obviously there's the idea that Jean-Claude Blanc coming in and replacing Richard Arnold. There's obviously a lot of talk in terms of who will be replacing or potentially replacing John Murtough. We've heard Dougie Freedman, we've heard Paul Mitchell, Michael Edwards is another name that I've seen touted around as well. Is it quite a refreshing outlook at the moment to see that, although it isn't a full sale in terms of getting rid of the Glazers, but it also looks like somebody is coming in and who looks like they genuinely care about the club, look like they want to get the club back to where we would argue it belongs, and finally have somebody that cares in terms of the sporting side. What do you think, Keane? I mean, obviously in terms of what is going to be brought in, what's kind of your thoughts on what should happen in terms of that side?
Well, Adam mentioned one phrase there a few minutes ago, and it was best in class, and I think that's what we need. We need that desperately. And I think you get these type of people in, Paul Mitchell, Michael Edwards. So to be fair, Dougie Freedman is someone who I've only heard of in the last kind of 12 to 18 months with Joe Palace's recruitment structure. And to be fair, if you look at their recruitment in the last 2 years, they've been actually quite shrewd in their scouting and their network. Now, one thing I'd say about Dougie Freedman is, whereas he might have the connection with Sir Alex, which is fair enough, but I want people who are used to working at the top level, because it's all well and good recruiting for Crystal Palace. Same way if Dan Ashworth came into Man United.
I see what. Let me interrupt you there then, Keane. What are your thoughts actually in terms of getting Fergie involved? Do you think he should be left alone? Because, I mean, obviously he helped with the Moyes appointment. Do you think he should just be left alone now? Or do you think it's valuable to get his sort of experience, obviously with his 26 and a half years at United? Do you think it's worthwhile getting his opinion, getting his expertise on it? Or do you think it's time that we left him alone and just allowed United to look into the future?
Look, it does no harm to obviously go to the greatest manager of all time and ask for a bit of football and advice. I think, look, if you have that man there at the end of the day, it does no harm. Is he an executive decision maker? No. I just like, again, it's like you have football people around the club, Fergie being one of them. You like to think that we would go to him, but at the end of the day, we have to look at this from a point of view as who's the best in class. Yes, Dougie Friedman's someone who obviously knows people at the club, which is great. But again, we need people who worked at the highest level, who have a full-bred background in these certain areas. And when you mentioned Paul Mitchell and Michael Edwards, like they're probably the two best director of footballs out there who are unemployed right now. Right now, the two best in the world are unemployed right now. Dan Ashworth's with Newcastle right now. And look, what he done with Brighton was unbelievable in terms of how he structured them. Like, make reference to the Evan Ferguson signing for them. Like, he scouted Evan Ferguson at 14 years of age from Bohemians, and Brighton got him for peanuts. Like you look all these other signings that Brighton have done down the years, like Caicedo, people like that. He's someone who's like best in class, probably just below, probably because he's worked at Brighton and Newcastle. But you look what Mitchell has done, and you look at especially Edwards at Liverpool when Klopp came in. Like, Klopp wanted Brandt. He told Klopp, no. Jurgen Klopp, one of the best managers in the world, he said no to him. And he got Salah. Salah suited his system better. So we do, like, what I want is someone who comes into with the right footballing idea, who can work alongside Eric Ten Hag. Because I think one thing that we have had since Ten Hag's come in this last kind of year and a half is because there's no structure above him. People criticize Ten Hag for going for players he knows, which I completely get. But when you have no structure above you, and you have no proper director of football or any type of background above you, you're going to revert to type, aren't you? With no proper scouting network there, and you're going to go for players you know. Like I know, like if you actually look at the managers post Fergie, right? If you actually deep this, Moyes went for players he knew because the system was gone. People were sacked from the club, there's chief scouts and stuff, and he went for Fellaini and Baines because they're players he knew. Louis van Gaal went for Daley Blind, player he knew, managing with the Dutch national team. Memphis Depay, Dutch league at the time as well. You look at Mourinho, he went for Matic, no pun intended. Lukaku, all these other players, because again, the club vetoed other players. So and even Ollie, like he went for players in the Premier League, and whatever about that, there was some of the signings weren't great. But if you actually look at the structure in the last decade, most of our managers, not just Eric Ten Hag, has gone for players that they know, because there was literally no one above him to tell him no or tell him something's better. Like I make an example of, like, if you look at Ollie's season a couple of years ago when we signed Donny van de Beek, he wanted Jack Grealish, and they told him no. Like, what right does this board have, right? The people who are there above him, to tell a manager no when they have no background? Like, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has a way more of football and background than some of these people who are above him. John Murtough, in his role, and his predominant role in his career has been recruiting for youth players, and he got a promotion further in the club. Bear in mind, he was hired when Moyes was hired. The same season Moyes was hired, so John Murtough wasn't best in class. I think Darren Fletcher is someone who can evolve into that role? Probably not, but I think he definitely has a role at the club in some capacity. But what I'm saying is, whoever does come in, they have to be in a position where they have to work with the manager, and they have to be a sounding board for the manager. Same way, like, I'm on this channel now, and like Greg actually comes up with all the ideas for the channel now, and when I have an idea, Greg tells me whether it's good or not. Do you know what I mean? This is the same fucking concept. Like, if Eric Ten Hag says, right, I want Frankie de Jong this summer, but then they turn around and say, right, Joe Neves, we've done some scouting on him, and he seems like a better fit. He's younger, he's a better profile for this system. We need someone in that position to turn around and say to the manager, right, this is what you need. This is the way you want to play. This is what you need to do. And I think just at the end of the day, when you look at the way that this club has been run, it's got to a point now where we can't afford, especially, like, look, whatever happens with them dirtbags across the road, and with all their charges, whatever happens with them, even if they don't get found guilty, or they can get they get a slap on the wrist, they're gonna just keep going and going and going. Chelsea eventually are going to get it right, because their players are so young. They'll eventually get it right. Liverpool are probably the club, I think, in and around us right now, who I'd say when Klopp leaves, they're probably going to get a similar effect to what Fergie left us. But we seriously can't afford to get this wrong. And my biggest concern is if he brings in all these best in class people, but then the Glazers are the ones setting the budget, we're back to square one, and there'll actually be more conflict within the club than there already is right now.
I mean, I think you're probably right in everything you're saying there. And Julio, I'm going to come to you next, but the thing that I wanted to ask in terms of on top of that is obviously with the right football people coming in to take charge of that, I suppose football operations side of things. We've obviously seen this some of that because we've not got that structure in place at the moment. That Ten Hag is probably having too much say in the recruitment side of things, and you could argue that some of his signings haven't really lived up to the probably not hype, but more price tag in terms of what we've ended up paying due to a lack of structure. Julio, would you take all recruitment away from Ten Hag and allow him to just focus on the coaching side of things? And so say, for example, if we were to get, I don't know, Paul Mitchell to come in, would you allow him to take charge of more of the recruitment side of things and allow Ten Hag to do what he's good at, which is the coaching?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, there's always a need for some kind of balance. And right now there isn't that balance there because there isn't the structure there to have that kind of balance. I think Ten Hag is allowed to have a say in terms of what he wants. He can turn around and say, right, I want a number 8 who can do this, for example, or I want a proper left-footed ball-playing centre half. He can ask for his requirements, but I think that he needs that structure above him to be able to say, right, well, you focus on the on-the-pitch stuff. We'll draw up a short list. We'll sort out the recruitment and stuff. And if you know any of these players, you can have some kind of input. Keane raises the good example with, the whole Klopp thing where he wanted Brandt and they said no, and they brought in Salah instead, and that didn't turn out half bad. One thing I think Reece, in fact, you can back me up on this, is one thing I've said is it feels like we need the analogy I use is King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, almost like we need that kind of that boardroom. We need someone at the top of the helm, and we need a bunch of people best in class around that round table to almost sort out this mess that is United, that has been left behind. And all the different names mentioned come with they're all different in some way. Like when you look at what Paul Mitchell's done, and then when like Maldini was a name that's mentioned, and what he did was maybe a little bit different. So I think that what's important is we need to understand what that structure is going to be and what the plan is. There's no use, for example, bringing in one person for the role when you want something different. I think the issue we've had, obviously, in terms of giving people roles in the football club, it's almost like, right, who wants to get promoted? Who's in the club right now that wants a better job, as opposed to looking around Europe and thinking, right, we need a sporting director. Who can we bring in that can help bring us back? So there needs to be that balance, but at the same time, Ten Hag really needs that structure, because honestly, it looks like he's opening his phone book half the time and calling people he knew from back in the day, whether it was, Amrabat from when he had him before, or like Weghorst when he apparently knew him as a young player at 20.
This channel after last night, Julio. Do not mention that man's name.
Sorry, but you see my point. Like Ten Hag can have some kind of input where he can say, I don't like this player for whatever reason, but I just think that there needs to be a structure in place. I am curious to see who does come in, like for that kind of sporting director role, because take Maldini, for example, his credentials were very good for what he did to Milan from when he first walked in to when he left, in terms of recruitment and in terms of what he did with wage structure and contracts. So that's almost another way to look at it, apart from the whole shrewd business, looking at players, who can we get? And also, these guys are well respected, these people we're linked to. Whether it's Michael Edwards or Paul Mitchell, these guys are respected around clubs in Europe, where we might see a scenario where we don't get fleeced on transfer fees anymore, and we can actually shift players for once. Michael Edwards was able to get a combined, I think, £65 million for 3 young players at Liverpool in Solanke, Jordan Ibe and Nico Williams, all of which weren't proven players at Liverpool. Nico Williams and Dom Solanke having played minimal football when they left Liverpool. So I just think that they need to identify the credentials they want. For example, Maldini had that thing about, bringing in shrewd signings, talented and scouting young players. But he brought in the likes of Giroud and Ibrahimovic, who were winners elsewhere. So there was that kind of balance. But I think at the end of the day, you need to get the right people for the role. And it would just be very interesting to see what happens with that regard.
Just before we obviously move on, I'm assuming this question has popped up as Keane wants me to discuss it, and I can't help but wonder why. Adam, I'll start with you on this one. So Jarvis has come in with a question saying Everton have been deducted 10 points, and there's still no word about City's 115 charges. Is it possible the FA is hesitant to punish City? That was not a mishap there. To punish City due to the fear of City breaking out and pushing for the Super League. I mean, from a personal opinion, Jarvis, I think the reason why they've held off is because of that. I think they've been, I think something a bit strange is going on. Either it's that, or the situation is genuinely that complicated. Because I think if you're going to offer 10 points deductions to Everton, then surely for the likes of City and Chelsea, the relative punishment across from what Everton have had is relegation and potential trophy removals. So, what are your thoughts on that, Adam?
Yeah, the difference between City, Chelsea, and then Everton is the fact that Everton cooperated with the Premier League. City and Chelsea just said no. I know Chelsea have gone to the Premier League simply because it was a previous ownership and they wanted to clear their names that way. But yeah, you're still using the same players, and there will be something that comes Chelsea's way on this. But in terms of Manchester City, they denied the sanctions, all 115 charges, and they will just drag that out as long as possible because they didn't cooperate. The Premier League have basically said, because they've done the 10-point deduction on them, they've said, you've cooked the books. There's no way around it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have got the 10-point deduction. The Premier League have been waiting and chomping at the bit to try and prove their strength in this sort of situation. And they've made an example of Everton just to show that they are still in control of their own league. Manchester City are the best team in Europe.
Them, though, Adam? Sorry, do you think them making this example of Everton could end up biting them? Because if they set this precedent as a 10-point deduction, and then come 6 months down the line, there isn't a suitable punishment for the likes of City and Chelsea. Do you think it ends up opening a sort of legal battle between Everton, Premier League, and then Everton and City? Do you think they've set a bit of a dangerous precedent for themselves?
Well, you look at it this way. Whatever happens from this point, they've opened up Pandora's box because everyone now, all eyes are on Manchester City. It's as simple as that. Everyone's going to be saying, well, Everton have been deducted points, the biggest point deduction in Premier League history. You get less for going into administration than what Everton have done, and they've basically opened up theirs and tried to follow all the rules and protocols. But what you got to look at now is if it does go in on Manchester City, which I can't see it doing for one reason alone, and that's the same reason why UEFA won't do anything about Real Madrid or Barcelona. They need Manchester City, otherwise their business goes down the Swanee. City are the biggest team on the pitch in Europe right now, the best team. No one can deny that. You can forget about the history and all that side of it. We all know it's fake. We all know it's all made up and manufactured with Manchester City. But they've got the glitz, the glamour. They've got the most expensive football brand in world football right now. They're all facts.
With the other teams, though, I don't think UEFA need City like they need.
Well, this is the thing, is, mate. We're not talking UEFA. We know what City think of UEFA.
Do you think
and we know what UEFA think of City. But what you've got to look at, this is the profitability and sustainability rules for the Premier League. This ain't got nothing to do with UEFA. City have already paid UEFA off. They don't care. So they think they can take on UEFA and that powerhouse. So the Premier League, they've just said no outright to. But the Premier League without Manchester City, the Premier League without Chelsea, and all of them trophies that were lifted, it kind of throws the Premier League into a farce scenario. Because what are they supposed to do then? They're going to have to answer to everyone, and it completely destroys the Premier League. So the Premier League are stuck. And I've covered this in depth this week with Everton and Manchester City and Chelsea. And I can't believe that they've done this to Everton, because they have now, they've really now opened up Pandora's box. Like I've said, it's like anything can happen from this point now. And I feel like what comes out next from the Premier League is going to be massive, because we're hearing that the appeal will have been heard from Everton by the end of this season. And that also then gives the right to Leicester, Burnley and Leeds United for their appeal for £100, 100 million each compensation to Everton. Everton right now are in a predicament where the deal between the 777 group and Mashira is all based off Everton not losing any value right now. So any sanctions or any deductions in points lowers the value for that deal that has already gone through. They're borrowing them 40 million a year to try and see them through this phase. Everything is going wrong for Everton right now, and it just seems like the Premier League have just jumped in on this opportunity. I feel like this one isn't over. I don't feel like this one's over for Everton, because the Premier League have to protect themselves in all of this as well. And this is why I was shocked when they got the 10 points and how it happened so quickly. So we all know City are guilty. We know. Everyone knows it. But they're hard to touch for the Premier League for them reasons that I've just said. They have to protect their own brand. And if you're about to say that Manchester City, you have lifted that very Premier League trophy 3 times in a row, up there in one of the most decorated while the Premier League era has been going on, have done this by cheating, what does that say about you and you letting that actually happen in your league? I just don't see how they touch Manchester City in all of this, and it's painful to admit it. It's painful to talk about it in that way, but that's the reality of it for me. I just don't see how we get any clarity on the City situation. It'll be dragged out forever and a day. And like you said then, you made the pound sign symbol. Who's got the bigger lawyers? Who's got the most expensive lawyers? Manchester City can pay for whatever they want, and they will tie this up for years.
Get someone like Harvey Specter in there, and they'll get off by hook or by crook. That's what'll happen there.
Well, that's it. I mean, there's no smoke without fire. I mean, why would you be paying 60 million out to UEFA if you're not guilty? That's what I ask. That's City already. That tells you everything you need to know. And 115. If one of them charges is upheld, the Premier League will be going. Well, the rest of the Premier League members, all the other teams, will be baying for blood. They will want City relegated. It's as simple as that. That will be the punishment. I can see that being a reality if this does come to a head. City will be made an example of, but I just don't see how the Premier League work it for them. I think it loses value, the English Football League, straight away if City end up getting the book thrown at them. It turns into a farce, the whole Premier League setup.
Well, in terms of that, I think it's the way City fans act so innocent around it and go, oh, well, nothing's been proven. How can you be charged with something 115 times?
Because they're all listening to Noel Bleeding Gallagher, mate. That's why. And obviously he's the oracle, and everyone has to understand that whatever he says goes. Prick.
Especially for them. Now, with situations like this, there's one man that we should always ask, because I'm sure there's many rants incoming. But Reece, I've been waiting to ask you this, but give us your thoughts on this.
To be honest, I don't think anything's going to happen to Man City. In the same circumstance that the Premier League are notorious for 2 things. One, protecting the Big Six by any circumstance. Like, that's generally what they do. That's what the Premier League was founded on. It was to ensure the financial success of the big. Well, it was back then the Big Four, because Man City were busy ploughing in the league they belonged, the second division. The entire of the league now, though, like Adam Spawn, in terms of like the financial wealth of the league, the amount of money the league generates year on year for a TV deal, yet they can't afford to bring in elite referees, sums up the governing body as a whole. The no matter what happens with City, first of all, I'm surprised that Everton got punished straight away. I mean, I can't stand any club from Merseyside, but let alone like Everton getting punished straight away is considerably a joke. When you look at clubs in the Championship, for example, who have got financial situations that take months on end to build a case upon to punish, you look like Cardiff City, Blackburn, Blackpool. They've all had situations over the past decade alone through ownership. You look at Bury, for example, like they're no longer around. Like there's clubs like that who are throwing the book at them for HMRC, for the government and all that, and it's a reflection of football that these owners are able to get away with it for such a long period of time, but you have to build a case. City, genuinely, the way they are with the money they've got, they have got infinite resources. They will not get caught. Like I want them to get caught. I want them to get punished. I don't think punishing the players is the right example as well, because again, this happened in other leagues before. It's happened in other countries where clubs have been severely punished for the way they've manipulated the system, using money to get what they want. The players that actually went out and done their jobs were punished more than the clubs were. In this circumstance, are you going to go and punish, even though he's a prick? Are you going to go and punish Vincent Kompany? Are you going to go and punish David Silva? Are you going to punish Sergio Aguero?
Oh, please punish him! Absolutely, 100%.
I wouldn't mind punishing for QPR, but and the actual fact of it is they've actually went out thinking they've went and done a job. Like, are they going to assume what's going on behind the scenes? No, they're just going to go and do what they're told to do, and that is play football. They're going to do it. Like the players at Juventus, for example, in the Calciopoli scandal, 2 years, 2 titles were taken off them. One of them was given into Milan as a default, and it was called a wooden trophy. It was called the paper trophy in the sense that. But one of them was voided, and they got immediately docked to Serie B with a minus 15 points deduction to start from scratch. In the Premier League, it's the same circumstance where are they going to see titles being handed to Man United, to Chelsea, to Arsenal or whatever, any of those clubs in that whereabout in that period of time? Are you going to see that happen? No. They're not going to do it because they're just going to say, well, they'll just either void the situation or they'll say, where's the evidence? Try to cook City, and then City will just pay it off. I would love to see City get, referencing another scumbag club at the moment, but I'd love to see them get punished for it. But I generally do not see it happening because they've got the resources, and also the Premier League. You can't trust their governing body either, because they allow clubs beneath them that they're supposed to be involved with the FA and all that. They were supposed to be protecting other clubs that are situations that were absolutely fucked over COVID situation and lockdown. Did they bother to help them? No. So I wouldn't bother asking the question, will City get cooked? The question is, how long will it take before the FA just buckle under? And I give it a year and a half max.
Yeah, I'm not best. I'm not completely optimistic that anything will happen to City, to be completely honest. Or Chelsea.
To be punished though. So did Chelsea.
Yeah, for that matter, I don't think Chelsea will be either. I think they'll get away with it in some kind of way. Ultimately, though, I don't think it's ever been a case. I mean, Man United quite often last season hit new manager bounces. I don't think anyone's ever hit a 10-point deduction bounce, which is going to be really fun to see next weekend. But I'm sure that'll be fun. One last thing that I think is worth discussing as well is obviously an ongoing situation that's been going on for a few months now, across with Ten Hag and Jadon Sancho. Obviously, it's in terms of reports, it's looking like he's still refusing to apologise. Personally, I think, from a personal opinion point of view, I think Ten Hag has done it in the right way. Every little bit of leeway that he's given to Sancho, I feel like it's just been taking the mickey out of a little bit by the player. With Jim Ratcliffe coming in and that football operations and the sporting operations being taken control of, what do you think he needs to do? Do you think it's a case of get rid of Sancho, sell him in January, or loan him out and pay half his wages and just get him out of the situation as soon as possible? Or do you speak to the manager and get the situation resolved? Keane, I'm going to come to you first on that one because I know you've got some opinions on it.
Yeah, look, I think that's one of the first things that's probably going to have to be sorted out when he comes in. It's a Sancho deal, because you literally have a £70 million player who's on 350 grand a week there, and he's not playing. Simple as, he's not playing. So they need to sort it out whether he's staying or he's going. Like, look, to be fair, the fact he can't just swallow his pride and just apologise tells me there's something bigger has gone on there, where either it's an ego trip on Sancho's side, or Ten Hag has said or done something that Sancho just refuses to play. But I doubt it, considering like when you look at he sent Sancho off to the training camp last year to look after himself.
Exactly.
And like, like, look, to be fair, he's given Sancho ample opportunity in the team by playing him in different positions. Like he played him in false 9, right wing, left wing, number 10. So like he's given Sancho every single opportunity to come back into this team. So I'm like being blunt about it. I'm fully on the manager's side with this one, because like we've had too many dickheads come into this club and collect a big wage and think that they can just use Man United for their own brand. And I think at the end of the day, we need, like Richard Arnold said, funnily enough, when Richard Arnold met to 1958 last year in the pub that time, in the video that was sent out, broadcast across Twitter, he said, "We've no dickheads policy." Well, I hope that, though Richard Arnold was kind of full of shit with that anyway, first of all, but hopefully Jim Ratcliffe takes that.
Because of the way he was the biggest dickhead in the club with the way he handled the Greenwood situation. But
yeah, we won't even jump down that rabbit hole tonight. But yeah, like, look, to be fair, I think we need to have that kind of policy in terms of like a no dickheads policy. And if Santos refusing to apologise and he was late for training and all that crack, then Jim Ratcliffe has to speak to the manager, say what's happened, speak to the assistants, everyone who's around, and then make a footballing decision, not a business decision. Because if this was in the hands of the Glazers and they're making a business decision, we all know £73 million is about 4 years left in his contract. We all know what they'd say straight away: keep him, make it work. They've done it with Martial years ago when Mourinho wanted to get rid of him. So I say back the manager with this straight away: get rid of him. Saudi Arabia are looking for him. I was speaking to Ben Jacobs about this the other day. If Saudi Arabia have any bit of interest, get rid 110%, and then get someone in, who can challenge Rashford for that left wing spot, challenge Anthony for that right wing spot. Just get someone in who can do the role Sancho was meant to do, and which he hasn't since he's come.
100%. I mean, Julio, I'm going to come to you next, mate. What are your thoughts on the Sancho situation and what should happen next regarding it, and with Ratcliffe coming in?
Yeah, I think the only time you can sympathise for Sancho in this whole scenario is the fact that the guy who's ahead of him in the pecking order hasn't exactly pulled up trees either. However, Ten Hag has given him probably as many chances as he can. From the sounds of it, from what's come out about it, the only thing we can see is Ten Hag has given him all these chances. He's tried to go down a different route now to get the best out of him. And instead of taking it, he's acted like he's not been given any chances at all, when arguably he's been given plenty, and he's not exactly pulled up trees. What we're hearing as well is that obviously the fact that, Jadon Sancho has always been like this, but the difference then was at Dortmund and at City, he was pulling up trees. He's not doing that now. So it's almost like he can't get away with this sort of this mindset he has, where he's a little bit more entitled than maybe necessary. So I think that what Ten Hag has done is he's gone about it completely the right way. I think it's gone to the point now where I'm disappointed, obviously, the way it's worked out, because Jadon Sancho, brilliant footballer. We saw it at Dortmund what he can do, but I think it's getting to the point now where you can't have him around anymore. If he's refusing to apologize and there's this continuous standoff, I think you have to back the manager in this situation. You can't double down on that. We've seen that far too many times in the last 10 years where player power has won. And if there's any time you back the manager, it would be this scenario. So I just think that whether it be someone in January or in the summer, or like whether it be in Europe or Saudi Arabia, I think it's gone to the point now where if he doesn't apologize and doesn't knuckle down and work hard like other players have when they've come under scrutiny, then I just think it's best that you don't keep him around, because you keep around one player like that and it will cause an effect. It will have a ripple effect on the other players in the dressing room, and Ten Hag right now can't afford that.
Adam, I'm going to come to you next then. Sancho, keep, sell. What's next?
I think everyone knows my stance on Jadon Sancho. which is one. See you later, you big baby. I'm not going to beat around the bush with this one. The man had 3 months off last season. He didn't play in the World Cup because he's crap. And Eric Ten Hag gave him 2 months off to try and bring him back round. For me, Premier League football off, taking that amount of time off, the way he came back and how crap he was towards the back end of last season when the team needed him, when we were stretched in playing so many games, to have that much time off and then come back and not perform to the level we needed or even be anywhere near looking like he wanted to be on that pitch. For me, that was enough last season. And then this season, it's like you want to throw this in the mix as well, when we know that you haven't even been playing or worthy of the club fighting for you to be still here. Jadon Sancho, for me, so Jim Ratcliffe has to come in and back the manager. The manager's already started making improvements in this club. He has to come in and back the manager. If he comes in and backs the manager, then that will be it. Jadon Sancho is gone. However way we do it, we'll end up losing money. But I think now we just need to act like a big club and say, look, let's just cut our losses where we can. Let's try and make what we can out of these and then start afresh from this point forward. This is a new era for Manchester United, and the club as a business and the sporting business needs to run completely differently. I can understand he fits the mould of what he wants, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, in terms of a player. Young, can get better, has got sell-on value if he does start performing again, rather than the likes of Casemiro, which we know he wasn't happy about. I can see that, but to come into Manchester United and not back the manager straight away, that just throws everything up in smoke for me. I think he'll back Ten Hag, and I think Sancho will be out the door. I've not seen Sancho have put 2 games together since he's been here. And you know what? Sometimes it don't work at United. We've seen it with many players. You sink or you swim. And we've seen a lot of sinking over the last 10 years of a lot of players. But no one else was in for Jadon Sancho. It wasn't a buy. There wasn't an option to buy him back by Manchester City. Pep Guardiola seen this kid walk off the training ground. There was issues here. And again, this comes down to the structure of Manchester United. Why were we the only team in for Jadon Sancho? And that, for me, tells you a lot. And he's now performing that way on the pitch as well. So, yeah, he can go for me. I ain't got a problem with it. And I don't care if we lose money on it either.
I think it's a given that we'll end up losing money. I think there's no way anybody with the money that we've put him on and the price tag we paid, I'd be absolutely shocked if we made a profit on him. But anyway, that is all we've got time for tonight, guys. So what I want to do is, Keane, obviously I want you to finish up because I believe you've got a few announcements you'd like to make. But first off, Adam, big thanks for you to coming on the channel. I believe this was your first time as well. So where can people find you? Give yourself a shout out.
Yeah, my channel United Vibe. Just go across there on YouTube. Everyone knows I'm on daily content, so yeah, follow me there, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Lovely. Reece, what about yourself? Where can people find you?
You can find me like Weekly Steel Chair. So you can find me like from my channel, and you can find me every Monday on the World of Football podcast. Thanks. Lovely.
Julio, yourself?
You can find me on Twitter at Julio Leshy, just there, or on the World of Football podcast, terrorizing Reece every Monday night at 8 p.m.
Yeah, I've got receipts on you, mate. Don't worry.
Keane, over to you. Obviously, I believe you've got a few bits you want to say just to finish us off.
Yeah, and you can obviously catch me here every week on the Devils Advocate podcast Tuesday. Me and Callum will have our first show, the United Road podcast. So at Callum's blog that he is writing at the minute, we're turning into a podcast on here every Tuesday.
That's a partnership between us going.
Yeah, so that's a dual partnership there. So we're doing that Tuesday, and we will have myself and himself, and we'll have a special guest on there as well, which I'll drop that on Twitter later on. And also next week after the Everton game, we will have referee Key Hacking on next week as well. That'll be our regular podcast starting. We didn't want to start it during the international break, so we said we started when the Premier League is back. So that's on, and always, well, do check out the reactions and all that crack on the channel as well. And yeah, cheers to the boys for coming on.
Lovely, big pleasure coming on. Lovely, always Always a pleasure hosting on air as well. So obviously, catch me on Twitter moaning about either the Tories or the fact Nigel Farage has just gone into the jungle. Obviously, the UnitedRoad.com is there. It's had a little bit of a hiatus, but with the podcast coming this Tuesday, it's going to have a little bit more of a regular update in terms of articles and blogs being posted. So check that out as well. But yeah, it's been a big pleasure, Keane. I'm sure plenty of stuff's coming up as well with the previews and reviews as well, and obviously end of the international break soon. So yeah, looking forward to it, mate.